Welcome back to EU Decoded, a podcast by the EPP Group in the European Parliament. My name is Kitty, I'm your host today, and in this episode we are going to be addressing the housing crisis. In recent years, many of us have experienced the increasing difficulty in finding a place to live, whether it's to rent or to buy. Rising prices, limited supply, and growing pressure in cities have made housing affordability a real concern for young people, for families, and for workers across the EU. And here with me today are some of the people working very hard to try to change this. I am delighted to welcome two EPP members, Mr. Giménez Larraz, Mr. and Mrs. Nikolina Brnjac,
Thank you.
and Mrs. Bianca Faragau, who is a policy officer at the European Investment Bank in Brussels. Now, earlier this year, the European Parliament adopted its first ever report on the EU housing crisis, setting a comprehensive roadmap of recommendations for the European Commission and for member states. Both Mr. Giménez and Ms. Brnjac were present for the vote in Strasbourg and played key roles in its adoption. Mrs. Brnjac as the EPP House coordinator and Mr. Giménez as the author of the file. Mr. Giménez, during the plenary session, you said, "A generation that cannot afford a home cannot build a future." Can you tell me what the EU's top priorities should be over the next 5 years to make housing more affordable?
Yes. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to this podcast. And let me begin with the diagnosis, with the situation that we have at this moment, because we have a structural problem. Rents have risen by 30% during the last 15 years, but houses prices 60%. And the consequences of this problem are being dramatic, as you are aware, from a social perspective, but also from a demographic perspective, as young people cannot start a new project of life without a house, and also an important problem for the competitiveness of the whole continent. What we have discovered during the last year, analyzing, studying the situation in the whole European Union, is that there is a clear reason behind this crisis, and it is the lack of supply. It is estimated that we need to build 10 million houses to meet the demand at this moment. So we need to build and to renovate massively in the whole European Union. And the situation is that we have discovered that during the last 5 years, the number of building permits have decreased in 20%. So there is something that it is not working correctly in the whole European Union, and this is what we try to address in this report in the European Parliament. Now we have a plan that was approved by a very large majority in this Parliament, and let me just mention some of the proposals very briefly. Reduce bureaucracy, simplify regulation, reduce taxes for the construction, ensure legal certainty, more data to provide and to facilitate and to have more accurate policies, and later I will explain more in more detail.
Thank you very much. Actually, yes, let's dive into those details. Ms. Brnjac, what are the different ways that the EU can better support young people and families?
So many young Europeans feel like they're doing everything right. They are working hard, they are studying, they are building careers, but they are struggling to afford a home. And we know that we are dealing with the biggest crisis in the European Union with affordable housing. And it's affecting, like Borja said, demography and our competitiveness sector. And all of the European Union is talking about competitive, how to be more competitive. And the answer is really easy. We should invest in our young people, because without the investing in the people and their housing, we cannot be competitive. In Mario Draghi's report, it said that by 2040, we are going to be missing 2 million workforce per year. So how to be competitive if we are not investing in the future of our young people, young generations? So the structure and the answer to the problem is that the European Union has to increase the supply. We talked about the 60% of costs of housing. If you want to buy a house, there are 60% increased, 30% increase of rents. So 10 million, well, like Borja mentioned, 10 million housing units we are lacking of 10 million units. So we have to build more to answer the demand. And then the bureaucracy, we have to, it's not normal that in some member states we have to wait for a couple of years to have a building permit. Is it normal? No, it's not normal. So we ask in our report to be, the building permits to be given in 60 days, less than 60 days. Then the third part is European funding. So we have to gather all of the European funding and we have to prepare ourselves for the next multi-annual financial framework and also with the help of European Investment Bank. And then I would say the fourth thing which is important, we have to invest in student housing. So in student housing, in building new student housing, it's very important because, and also affordable rents, because when you finish university and when you finish your education, you cannot go and buy a house because you don't have enough money, you don't have enough resources. So we have to have equally 50-50 percentages of, for affordable rents and affordable buying for the young people.
Would you like to add anything about student housing?
Yes, so I would just like to say that our EIB economic analysis fully confirms the diagnostic of the Parliament's housing report. We have a problem of insufficient supply of affordable housing and also an increasing demand because of demographics, because of concentration in urban dynamic centers. And this means that we need to build more affordable homes for students, for families, for key workers. This is absolutely the case. We have good news that if we manage to tackle and build more, we can increase the competitiveness of our European economy. So we can increase labor mobility, help students study where they want to study, then get a job where the jobs are in cities, maybe in very productive urban centers. And that means we're going to increase competitiveness. This will add to EU's GDP between 2 and 4%, which is quite a lot. So we will all benefit. Yes, on student housing, absolutely, there is a big need, and we are helping from the EIB, European Investment Bank side. We are supporting municipalities where they can build student campuses. We are working with universities directly as well to expand existing campuses, build new student housing. And I should say that also European Investment Fund is investing with equity in student housing fund of funds. This already exists in Italy, across the north of Italy, the university centers, but also there is a student housing fund of funds for Central Eastern Europe, the 6 European countries on the east, Poland, Slovakia, Czechia, and the Baltics. So there we have a fund of funds where actually student housing is being developed, is being built to increase 4,000, for example, student beds in the coming years. So things are moving, but there is such a big gap, such a big demand that we really need to mobilize our efforts.
Thank you. And before, I want to talk about construction because we need to build a lot, but just before, I think there's still a lot of red tape when it comes to building and buying houses. And I think that part of your report aimed to lighten the administrative burden and remove some of the barriers to becoming a homeowner. Mr. Larraz, Giménez,
Yes,
Larraz. My apologies.
Yes, of course, don't worry about this. Yes, what we have detected is that there is some EU legislation that can be affecting, for example, negatively in the process of construction, that can be provoking obstacles, unintentional obstacles, but they are provoking. So now the European Commission is making an audit to detect, to identify which piece of legislation. We have made our own research and we have in mind some of these proposals that could be a problem in that sense, and that we should try to simplify a little bit. For example, the nature restoration law, the air quality directive, that it can increase construction costs, the water framework directive, the soil monitoring law, the energy efficiency directive. All these are really important pieces of legislation, but at the same time, if it is necessary to simplify, we will have to do it to try to improve the situation and the processes of construction. Another important question that we have included in the report, that it is a competence of the member states, it is the mobilizing of land. This process, for example, in my country, in Spain, the transfer from land into developable urban land can easily take from 10 to 15 years. This cannot be, because this provoke important increase also of costs, and also, yes, a very long process. Housing permits, and it was mentioned by Nikolina, housing permitting, we have include also very ambitious targets like this maximum period of 60 days to granted these building permits. This is at least a very clear political message from this institution. Also, the inclusion of the principle of administrative silence, something also really important in all these processes, and the digitalization of the process and all this permitting.
Administrative silence, that means that if they haven't heard back within 60 days, they take it as a yes?
Yes,
Or, yes.
This is the reality, because this is one of the problems that we have detected, that sometimes the problem is that the administration they don't have a clear signal, a response regarding the demands. So we have to include this principle as a way to accelerate the process.
Yes. Sounds like a good idea to me. So now, moving on to construction. So housing shortages are one of the biggest challenges. Mrs. Brnjac, how much can innovation and better construction methods help to solve this housing crisis?
So I think that innovation and better construction methods are a really big part of the solution. Because when we are talking about housing crisis, we are talking about supply crisis. We detected 10 million units which are missing on the market. So we have to find a way how to build better, how to build faster, how to be more efficient. And we now see that the construction costs are increasing, labor costs are increasing, material costs are increasing. So we have to be much more efficient. And because of this, I, as a coordinator in House Committee, organized a conference in the Parliament, How to Build Better. I invited European Council of Engineers Chambers and European Council of Civil Engineers, because I truly believe that the ones who are designing, the ones who are building, they have the knowledge. And we as a policymakers have to listen to them, because they know what is the problem and how to resolve this problem. And because we have to be quicker, we have to find new solutions. And one of the conclusions was that we have to use innovative solutions, new methods of construction, because they are here, they exist, and we just have to use it more in practice in this way, and also digitalization in construction sector. So with all of this, we could be much, much faster in building, because obviously 10 million is a lot. So we have to do everything what is in our power to be more modernized, use, as I said, digitalization, because construction sector is about, I think, 9% of EU GDP, and it employs 18 million people. So the solution of our problem is going to be how this sector is going to answer quickly to this problem. So everything is connected. There is no, like Borja mentioned, one simple solution. So we have to look to all of the angles and all of the bits to how to solve this very, very big crisis that is happening now in the European Union. And we have to deliver.
And in terms of, is renovation faster than building new homes, or do both have to be done at the same time?
I think that both have to be done at the same time. We have, first of all, we have to build new supply, and we also have to renovate where we can. For example, I will give the example from my country, Croatia, and my city, Zagreb. We have a lot of greenfield investments, like, for example, could be greenfield investments when we look at the industrial zones in the city, the city center, which are now actually abandoned and empty. And they could be used for affordable housing. So this is a good example how to push the city to use these greenfield investments, which could be much, much faster than starting from the scratch. Because of all of this that Borja mentioned in the beginning with bureaucracy and Now, if we look at this in this way, it could be much faster to deliver affordable homes, and it could be like, for example, in Croatia, our example is 50-50. 50% is from the rent, and 50% is for the buying, because not everybody who finished, as I said, university could directly buy the apartment, so they can have affordable rents. And with this renovation, it could be much, much faster. And I always say, why not to use these industrial zones which are abandoned, and they're actually in city centers. And sometimes the cities are pushing young people outside the cities. And then you have additional costs because there's no infrastructure, there's no transport infrastructure, there's no kindergartens, there's no additional infrastructure which is actually needed for these young people. And for them, it would be much convenient to live in the city center when it is possible. Not every city has these opportunities and possibilities.
Yeah.
And then also when we talk about renovation, we should talk about energy efficiency, because 80%, 85%, if I'm not mistaken, of the buildings in the European Union were built before year 2000. And only 75% of them have poor energy efficiency. So it's a big problem, because then you have big energy bills. And then it's connected with energy poverty. So we have to do all of these three things together, combined, and then we could say that not only renovation or not only building the new housing unit or energy efficiency of the buildings, but all together they are part of the big solution.
And requirements for energy efficiency are important to enable affordable housing, but also these requirements, Mr. Giménez, is there a risk that some of these energy efficiency requirements might actually unintentionally make housing less affordable?
Yes, I really believe that this is something that it is happening, and as it has been mentioned by Nikolina, our commitment to guarantee this energy efficiency, this is a priority for us, but at the same time, we have to try to find a way to get a balance between this objective and the competitiveness of the construction sector. Because in the end, it is that we need to build more houses, and we should try to reduce the cost final of these houses. And today we know that the Energy Performance of Building Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, they bring excessive requirements and they impose excessive cost in that case. So we try to find this balance, to simplify, to find a way to improve the situation in that sense. And let me talk about the innovation, because in this case, for example, we are all the time talking about innovation linked with the energy efficiency when we talk in the European Union. But I really believe that we should try it also to put more efforts from the European Union in link innovation with trying to reduce cost or to accelerate the construction, to try to have less labor-intensive methods, as we have a very clear problem in the European Union of lack of efforts. So just to say, yes, innovation, but we have to promote innovation not just for the energy efficiency, but also to accelerate this process of construction in the whole European Union.
And we need money to build houses.
I was going to say.
Mrs. Faragau.
No, I fully agree. I fully agree with what was said, because we can, in fact, build faster, cheaper, more cost-efficient, and have less labor-intensive. So there are already technologies out there, like off-site construction, prefabricated materials. There are even AI solutions, robotics solutions. It's just that they are at small scale. These are very small, maybe SMEs, some small companies that are innovating, and what they need is to bring that to scale. To bring that to scale, you need a capital, upfront capital, which no commercial bank would be able to give without having the number of units upfront to construct. So that's where EIB has decided to make innovation in construction one of our 3 priorities, next to building more homes and renovation as well. But innovation in construction is really at the very top because we need to support with access to financing for these companies, smaller, medium or large companies that are willing to do risky innovation. We're talking quite a big risk because they are breaking through innovation, doing everything off-site and moving, because we can actually build or save 30% on time, on people, resources, and I think cut in half, the construction costs if we do that way. So we already have pilots in place. Now is really to bring them to scale. To do that, the EIB last year in Barcelona, in fact, we launched a lending envelope. So let's say a dedicated financing just for companies that are innovating in housing construction. We call it Housing Tech EU. So it's 400 million between this year, next year. Any company that has an innovation that needs support, that could be new materials. Let's say we just started to support a venture debt company in Berlin that is using paper waste into recycling construction material, which is excellent. We need also to innovate, to use less materials, and we use new construction methods, technologies, but also AI and robotics, which could really make a change. So the message out there is, and we are doing a housing roadshow to promote that we have already a lending envelope. We have loans, very long-term, low cost for companies who want to innovate. Now we need them to come and really take the step forward.
And there are different types of investments, right? There's public investment, private investment, and public-private partnerships.
Yes.
Who would like to tell me about that?
We all can
Maybe you can start. Yes.
Yes. So, yes, we have public investments. So it means that the governments, regions, cities, municipalities, they all have a big responsibility in affordable housing, student housing, and even social housing. So they are big part of the solution, and only if they work together, we can find and we can resolve this big issue. How? Because, for example, the cities are the owners of the land. The cities are doing the spatial planning. So we in Croatia have adopted new legislative act on affordable housing, and we gave the obligation to the cities to calculate, to make some kind of management plans, so they will see the need for affordable housing, for rents, and for possibility to buy. So, and also, what are the targeted groups? How many of the people are included, are in need? So this is the things that only the cities can know. For example, we have the biggest problem of affordable housing actually in the city of Zagreb. So the city of Zagreb has to make calculations about their needs, about the land, where to build affordable housing for buying or for rent. And then, only then, they all together, as I said, play a crucial role in designing and building this affordable housing. Then the second part is private. So the private investments is obviously needed, because you cannot resolve the question but only with public investments. No, we need clear also private sector, strong private sector. And at the end, we have to have public-private partnerships, which is really interesting, because I organized 1 year ago a big conference in Zagreb, and there I invited people from experts from Austria, from Netherlands, from UK, from Poland, with all different examples and the models used with good examples. So, for example, some city can give the land to private investor, and private investor then can build affordable apartments, and they give the percentages, I don't know, 30, 40, 50% for affordable housing. It depends on the calculations of the price of the land and all the other parameters. And then what is also a good example is through housing cooperatives. It is also a very good example where you can combine citizens, you can combine local communities, cities, financial institutions, even private sector could be included. So these are all good examples how we can resolve the question of affordable housing on the field, on the ground, where it's needed. So, but the different cities, the different member states have different opportunities and different possibilities how to resolve this issue.
Mrs. Faragau, did you have some other examples you wanted to tell us about?
So I fully agree with the assessment because indeed there is a part that is public investments. This is important, but it's not enough to do public investments. And also currently we know municipalities and member states have overstretched budgets, and also the fiscal space to take more debt is very limited due to the budget deficit rules. We've seen that in many countries. So we really need to find a way to mobilize private capital. And there are ways to do that. So I will say two ways. First and foremost is, it could be a PPP model, public-private partnership, or it can be a financial instrument. And I like to maybe focus a bit on this because the EU funding is very, very important and can help us to de-risk the investments. So either we use a guarantee of the EU budget through InvestEU. It's very well known. InvestEU has a social investment window where affordable housing can be supported. This is absolutely essential for riskier operations for municipalities that would need the EU budget guarantee because otherwise they won't be able to get the support. So we would give the financing, the loan, to a city like Hanover in Germany or so on for building and renovating affordable homes, and we would use InvestEU guarantee. Another way is each member state or cities, regions, they may be eligible for grants, EU funding under cohesion policy, for example. That grant could be used as an interest rate subsidy for the loan you take from the EIB or another bank. So you could use that, and on top of that, if you construct a financial instrument, a fund of funds, we could help bring other banks from the national, local level on board because it's a safe investment. You have the grant element, very safe. EIB plays a role. So that makes the investment extremely safe for other banks to chip in. So from €1 that is the grant of the EU fund put in, we could maybe mobilize 3, 4, 5 euros. And this has paid off for energy efficiency renovations. Lithuania is a champion, for example, that has used this, putting some grants and mobilizing private capital. Another way, which I find it fantastic, and I think I use the opportunity here to say, we have to build more partnerships between not just the EIB, but also national promotional banks, like in Harbor with Croatia, or Caisse de dépôt et consignation in France. So EIB can chip in with some financing and then work with national banks so that they can get our credit line with advantageous financing. So think of long-term, low cost for financing. And we pass on these advantages to smaller municipalities, all housing providers, all across territories, which otherwise would not be able to come to EIB, right? Because they are too small and so forth. So the national promotional banks can pass on our financing, and that can be an alliance, a partnership. And we have such a partnership in France, where EIB works with Caisse de dépôt et consignation and with Council of Euro Development Bank. In the last 5 years, we mobilized €5 billion just for France. And that helped tens of thousands of homes to be built and renovated, and lowered the overall cost because of the partners involved. And I think we need to do more of that, and that's the next step at EU level.
Yes, we have to mobilize everything.
Yes.
We have to mobilize, as I said, not a question of the public money, because it's not enough.
No.
10 million units are missing.
Yeah.
Yes, this is what I wanted to mention, that in the end, as we have said, that we need to build or to renovate 10 million houses, to create new 10 million houses, what it seems clear is that public money is not going to be enough. So in that sense, we need to attract as much as possible money from all the areas. When we talk about private investment, during the 2008, the credit dried up, and this is a reality. It was closed, the credit. There is now excessive requirements to access to the credit for small, medium enterprises. So maybe the European Commission, and this is what we have proposed in our report, is that they should assess the possibility to flexibilize the access to this credit. But at the same time, of course, the public money is fundamental, the EIB, the European funds, the Pan-European investment platform, all this and all the ways to try to promote also the private-public partnership is crucial. But as I told you, we need to mobilize as much money as possible.
Before we wrap up, I would like to have a magic wand moment. If each of you could fix one thing in housing policy instantly, with no political constraints, what would it be? I know it's a difficult question because it's a very ensemble.
It's not
Okay,
a good question. I would say, first of all, the short-term rentals. Because we saw the wrong approaches on short-term rentals. What was happening, for example, in the city of Barcelona. They just banned short-term rentals. When I talked with the mayor and I asked him on which data and which basis, they couldn't say. It was like a political decision. So I think it's wrong because tourism is not opposite to housing. But what happened there is lack of management, lack of governance. If you don't governance the development of the tourism sector, then obviously it can affect the housing sector and affordability of housing for the young people. But if you governance it, if you collect the data, if you smartly manage the development of the tourism with this data, then you could have no problems with, you will clearly know in which part of the city, for example, they have a problem of short-term rental, and maybe the other part of the cities don't have this issue and don't have this problem. But you have to balance it. It's not easy to balance it. We adopted a legislative act in Croatia called the Act on Tourism, which brings obligation for the cities of index of tourist development of 1 and 2, so the highest. They have to calculate carrying capacities. So, for example, they have to calculate electricity supply, utility infrastructure, transport, and all of these things together. And then they with all of these numbers, they see what is the problem and where is the problem. And then we also, with Act on Affordable Housing, also they have to see what are the stressed areas in housing. So not all of the areas are stressed in housing and they have the same issue and the same problem. So when you collect the data, I would say without the data, it's just mine or your opinion. But with the data, you get the clear answer how to resolve this biggest issue. And I would say that this short-term rental is not a problem when we manage the development of the tourism sector. And this is why I suggested to the Commissioner Tzitzikostas and to the Commissioner Jorgensen the legislative act on short-term rentals, but the balanced approach, because there's no similar situation in every city. So every city is a different story, but if we give them the tools to manage it, then we can balance the progress development of the tourism and affordable housing for the young people.
Thank you. Mr. Giménez?
Just very brief, maybe from my side, it will be to make a fast track for housing permits and to make more attractive to invest in the building sector. I think that this is the priority. What we cannot understand is why the private sector is not interested now in this moment with this very high demand to invest in the sector. So that will be my crucial proposal.
Thank you. And Ms. Faragau?
So my ideal solution would be to really empower every city and every member state, also those where there is no current policy or regulatory framework in place. We haven't talked about that. Central and Eastern Europe, about a third of countries do not have a legal framework. So we need to build that and help them build that to define what's affordable housing in that context and what would work there. So I would like to see that every city and every government would get the tools that they need to be able to do the work and prioritize and find a solution that works in that context, because housing is very much driven by the local and regional national context. So that also means that we need strategic advisory support, not just financing and funding, but advisory, the experts to actually advise cities on what, and help them calculate what's the housing gap, what is really the problem, what other solutions out there in Europe exist and you could get inspiration from and adapt. Because we should be honest, in Europe we have a lot of good ideas. We are very fragmented, we don't have scale, and sometimes we don't know about each other's ideas, whether you're doing in Croatia or in Spain. So ideally what I would like to see is a peer learning, mutual learning program, not just between governments, but also with cities, so that when a city has decided, I want to do this properly, they have access to the good models, Vienna model, Barcelona, France, and then they get to decide, okay, this is what works for me, and I want to build from that point onwards.
And this is why in EPP we are going to organize a conference of exchange of knowledge between the member states, best experiences. Yeah. I think in autumn it's going to be organized.
Yes, it's going to be a reality.
Yes, reality, how to solve because a lot of, as you said, member states have good experiences. For example, in my country, we exchange 15 laws and bylaws. We adopted the first act on affordable housing. We understood that a big responsibility is also on the cities, because they are the ones who should know what is happening. The government has clear guidance and the structure and the frameworks and everything, and the finances, which is obviously very important, but they're the ones who should be dealing also in the regions and the cities with resolving this very important issue together.
Yes. And
no,
go
sorry.
ahead.
and I really believe that we need to have a guide of best practices, but at the same time we need also a guide of bad practices, because we have detected some policies that, for example, are being developed in my country, in Spain, that maybe sometimes can sound very well, like the limit of prices, but in the end, the effects that they provoked are so negative for the whole sector, and they don't bring anything positive. So this is important, I really believe also.
And just to add that how EIB can help, we're not just a financing partner or EU's financing arm, but we really have expertise over the 30 years that we supported housing sectors all across Europe. So we bring free of charge technical assistance and financial structuring. For example, we worked in Croatia with the 5 biggest cities of Croatia to help them assess the housing gap and bring strategy and tools to get blueprint, like housing plan locally. We do the same in Latvia with 13 cities, where there is more public-private partnership schemes that would work. So now we have worked 1 year there. We're at the level of tendering, and now we're going to also start financing these PPP schemes. So we try to help, and this is all thanks to advisory, EU funding for advisory under the InvestEU Advisory Hub. So we have to make sure that in the next MFF there is also funding for advisory if we want to keep this. And this is also very important because we can, and we are in the process of identifying plug-and-play models. So templates of like 5 or 6 different ways in which different schemes that could work. When cities or governments want to start something in Romania, Bulgaria, they come to us and we can see, okay, these are the 5, 6 models. What would work in your context? Let's adapt. So that we can help.
And what we talked in the beginning, it's very important to not make ghettoization. And what is the example model of why we are doing this in Croatia? 50-50%, 50 for rents and affordable rents, and 50% for affordable buy, is to make like society all together without ghettoization. Because if we do only for the rents, then it is a good possibility, like we mentioned in the beginning, to make ghettos, and we don't want this. We want all people from, I don't know, teachers, doctors, medical workers, police officers, all in one place, because this is the integration of all groups.
So many amazing ideas and all remain to be put into practice. This is great. Thank you so much, all of you, for your insights. The EPP Group is on a mission to turn the housing crisis into an opportunity for young people, for families, and for the middle class throughout Europe. And you've shown us the roadmap. So build more homes faster, help young people and families, stimulate public-private partnerships, prioritise local solution, and support innovation. Thank you for listening to EU Decoded. Do join us next time as we explore other EU topics, and in the meantime, follow the EPP Group on social media, and most importantly, stay informed and stay engaged. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.